she scolded. "You're an old woman with a terrible sense of taste. It doesn't matter what you eat. Don't waste it." For 2 years and 3 months, I ate other people's yesterday. This is the most precise description I have of the arrangement. My daughter-in-law Jennifer served me the previous evening's dinner, reheated or not reheated, according to her preference on the given day, while she and my son Marcus ate fresh food at the same table. The plates were different. The quality of attention was different. The implicit message of the arrangement was consistent and clear. You are here as a guest who has overstayed, and the food we serve you reflects our assessment of your welcome. I want to be specific about what the leftovers were, because the specificity is what makes the pattern legible as a pattern, rather than as a series of individual decisions. The fish that had been in the refrigerator for 20 hours, the pasta that had been reheated twice and had developed the specific gummy texture that pasta develops when it has been through the refrigerator and the microwave and back. Refrigerated to reach the temperature at which it is pleasant to eat. The vegetables that were soft in the way that cooked vegetables become soft when they have been stored. The specific limp quality that tells you the vegetable has been through more than cooking. Jennifer said, when I once mentioned that the fish from the previous night had developed a quality that fish develops when it has been in the refrigerator too long. "You're old, Mom. Your taste is ruined. It doesn't matter what you eat, and we shouldn't waste good food." She said "Mom" in the way that some daughters-in-law say "Mom," as a word that performs warmth while its container is cold. The way a cup can be warm on the outside from someone else's hands, while the tea inside has gone cold. I had noted this quality in Jennifer's speech since the first time she had used the word with me, approximately 6 years earlier, at the dinner that introduced us as a family. The warmth in the word and the cold in the container. "Of course," I said. To the fish, I ate it. I ate it the way I'd eaten many things across 2 years and 3 months, with the specific patience of someone who has decided that the eating is not the point, and that the patience is being saved for something else. The something else was in process. The something else had been in process since the previous October, when a lottery ticket I had purchased at the gas station on Broad Street. The scratch card variety, the kind that takes 30 seconds to reveal whether the 30 seconds were worth spending, had produced a number that I had looked at for approximately 4 minutes before I called the lottery office to verify it. The number had been verified. The subsequent process, the claiming, the legal establishment of the trust through which the payment was made, the specific financial planning that a person requires when a large sum arrives, had taken from October to January. By January, the process was complete. In February, I began looking at companies. My name is Rosemary Claire Ashton Mosu. I am 69 years old. Before my retirement in 2016, I was an accountant, a CPA who had spent 31 years in the profession, including 12 years as a partner at a mid-sized accounting firm, and whose specific expertise was the analysis of company financials for the purposes of valuation and acquisition. I know how to read a balance sheet. I know what a company is worth. I know how to buy one. Jennifer works at a company called Meridian Analytics. She has worked there for 7 years in a senior marketing role. Meridian Analytics is a data analytics firm with 43 employees, a client list that includes several regional corporations, and revenues that I had assessed, from the filings available in public records, at approximately $4.2 million annually. In February, I made an offer on Meridian Analytics. I want to tell you about the lottery before I tell you the rest, because the lottery is the unexpected center of the story, and because the telling of it requires honesty about what it was and what I did with it. I have been buying lottery tickets for 41 years, not with any serious expectation of winning. I am an accountant, and I understand probability. and the probability of winning a significant lottery prize is not a serious investment thesis. I buy them because the act of buying a ticket is a specific kind of small hope, the kind that is permitted to the hopeful and that I have found across 41 years to be one of the affordable pleasures of a life that has had its portion of failures. Difficulty. The scratch card I bought in October was purchased on a Tuesday morning on my way to the grocery store, and I scratched it in the car in the gas station parking lot. And the number I uncovered was a number I stared at for 4 minutes. I say 4 minutes because I know that I sat in the car with the card in my hands for a specific and measurable period before I did anything. And the period felt long, and the period was long, and 4 minutes is my best estimate of it. The lottery board's verification process requires documentation, and the documentation requires time, and the time gave me the opportunity to think. I thought about the lottery's amount, which was significant and which I will not specify, because the specific amount is not the point of this account. I thought about what the amount meant, not abstractly, the way one thinks about a lottery win as a concept, but specifically in terms of what the amount could do and what I wanted it to do. I thought about the leftovers, not as a grievance, or not only as a grievance, as a specific and documented fact about a patterned behavior in a household in which I lived. The leftovers were data, in the same way that a company's accounts receivable aging report is data. They told you about the nature of the relationships, and the assumptions underlying them, and the data consistently collected across 2 years and 3 months told a coherent story. The story the leftovers told was, I was not valued. The question was what to do with this story. An accountant, when presented with data that tells a story, does not respond to the data immediately. An accountant considers what action the data supports and whether the data is sufficient for the action and whether the action is proportionate to what the data shows. I am an accountant, I thought for 3 months before I did anything. The 3 months of thinking produced the following analysis. The data was sufficient and the pattern was clear. The action that the pattern supported was the action that would produce a specific and comprehensible consequence, not a revenge, because revenge is personal. And the accountant's response is professional, but a consequence. The consequence needed to be felt rather than explained, because the 2 years and 3 months of explanation had not produced a change in the pattern. Your taste is ruined was the explanation Jennifer had offered for the pattern. It was not an explanation that could be argued with verbally, because verbal arguments about taste are not persuasive. The only argument about taste that is persuasive is the argument made at a table with a plate in front of people who are eating something different. This analysis produced the plan. The plan required a company. The company I identified was Meridian Analytics. My husband Solomon died in 2018. He had been a generous man in the specific way of men who have built what they have built through their own effort and who feel the building as a reason for generosity rather than as a reason for hoarding. He had said to me more than once in the last years of his life, when the realities of aging had moved certain abstract discussions closer to the concrete, Rose, whatever you have when I'm gone, use it for something that matters. Don't leave it in an account to gather interest that nobody uses. Solomon had been a contractor, the kind who builds things with his hands and who understands the specific relationship between effort and result that physical work produces. He had built the business from 2 employees to 14, and the building had been the work of 30 years of showing up and doing what he said he would do. He was not sophisticated in the ways that some people mean by sophisticated, but he was deeply competent in the ways that matter. The ability to assess a situation honestly, to determine what it required, and to do that thing. He would have understood the acquisition. He would have understood it immediately in the way of someone who does not need the explanation elaborated, who hears the essential structure of a situation and grasps what it is. He would have said, you found out what she was doing. You found the right tool. You used the tool. He would have nodded. He would have gone back to whatever he was working on. I missed him every day. I missed him particularly in the months between the October lottery and the September lunch, which were months of significant decision-making, conducted without the benefit of his specific quality of assessment. The assessment I had available was my own, which is the assessment I've always had, and which has generally been adequate. But his confirmation of my assessment had been something I had relied on for 40 years, and the reliance does not simply end when the person who provided it is gone. I had inherited from Solomon a comfortable amount, not a life-altering amount. The house, the investment accounts, the careful savings of a couple who had lived within their means across 40 years. But a comfortable amount. The lottery had added to the comfortable amount in a way that made it a different kind of amount. The combination of Solomon's principle, use it for something that matters, and the specific data of the leftovers I was not valued, had, by January, produced a plan. The plan required a company. The company I identified was Meridian Analytics. An acquisition of a privately held company is more straightforward than most people assume, and less straightforward than most people who think they know what they are doing assume. The steps are specific, and the sequence matters, and the specific expertise required, the financial analysis, the legal due diligence, the negotiation of terms, is the expertise that I spent 31 years developing and 12 years teaching to others. I engaged a lawyer, not the family lawyer, who handles wills and property, a corporate attorney, a woman named Patricia Osei, who had been recommended by a former colleague and whose practice specializes in M&A work for mid-market companies. Patricia reviewed my financial position, understood the target, and helped me structure the approach. The approach I had decided on was a direct offer to the founders. Meridian Analytics was founded in 2017 by two partners, David Chu and Amanda Forsyth, who together owned 60% of the company, with the remaining 40% held by Anne, early investor who had been looking for an exit for 2 years. The investor's desire for exit was publicly documented in a court filing from a partnership dispute that had since been resolved, but the documentation of the desire remained. I made the offer through Patricia's firm without disclosing my identity in the initial approach. The offer was fair. I valued the company at 4.5 times trailing EBITDA, which is the standard multiple for a company of Meridian's size and growth profile in the analytics sector. And the number was generous enough to be taken seriously. While leaving room for negotiation, Patricia negotiated on my behalf through April. I want to tell you about what the due diligence showed, because the due diligence is the part of an acquisition that tells you what you are actually buying, rather than what you are being told you are buying. Meridian Analytics was a well-run company. The financials were clean, no unusual items, no off-balance sheet obligations that hadn't been properly disclosed, no accounts receivable that were aging badly. The client concentration was moderate. No single client represented more than 18% of revenue, which is an acceptable profile for a company of this size. The team had low turnover, which is the metric that tells you whether the culture is functional. The product reviews from clients were consistently positive. The company was, in short, what it said it was. This is not always the case in acquisitions of privately held companies. I had seen, in my career, deals where the financials told a different story from the company's presentation, where the client relationships were less stable than the management indicated, where the employee retention numbers concealed a culture that was driving out good people. Meridian was not one of those situations. The deal was a good deal by any professional assessment. It was also the specific deal that gave me the access I needed for the September purpose. The founders accepted in May. The investor accepted simultaneously because the investor's price had been established as part of the founder's negotiation. The legal closing took 6 weeks. I was the sole owner of Meridian Analytics as of the 1st of July. During the period of the acquisition, from February through July, I had continued to live in Marcus and Jennifer's house and to eat the leftovers that Jennifer prepared. I want to be clear about this. The acquisition was not yet disclosed to anyone in my household, and my life in the household continued as it had continued. I sat at the table. I ate what was served. I said, of course, to the explanations about taste and waste. The patience required for this period was the patience of someone who knows what she knows and who has decided that the knowing will produce its own moment. I have described this patience as the patience of an accountant, which is the most precise description. An accountant who has not yet closed the books does not announce the quarterly figures. The figures are what they are. The announcement comes when the period is complete. The period completed on the 1st of July. I did not tell Marcus or Jennifer. I scheduled the board lunch for September. I want to tell you about the career because the career is what made the acquisition possible, and because understanding the career is what makes the acquisition legible as more than a lottery winner's impulse purchase. I became a CPA in 1981, at 26 years old, having worked as a junior accountant for 2 years after completing my accounting degree at Temple University. The certification was the result of the specific kind of sustained effort that certification examinations require. The studying in the evenings after the day job, the practice problems in the mornings before the day job, the specific sacrifice of other pleasures and activities for the period of the preparation. I describe this not because it is unusual. Many people study for professional certifications under these conditions, but because the pattern of sustained effort for a specific future result is the pattern that the career produced repeatedly and that the acquisition repeated. A specific goal, a specific preparation, a specific execution. The 31 years of accounting practice produced in me a specific relationship with financial information. The understanding that numbers are not neutral, that what they say about an organization or a person or a household is the thing worth understanding. The numbers tell you what is actually happening, as opposed to what people say is happening, or what people believe is happening. I will give you a specific example of what this means in practice, because abstract statements about financial information are not as useful as concrete examples. When I joined the accounting firm in 1983, as a junior accountant, one of my first significant projects was the audit of a regional retailer whose finances told a story that the company's management had not told its board. The story was the company's margins were declining because its inventory management was poor, and the poor inventory management was producing a consistent pattern of obsolete stock that was being written down at the end of each quarter, and the write-downs were small enough individually that they had not triggered any alarm, but large enough cumulatively that they were eroding the company's financial health. The management had not lied. They had simply not looked at the data in the way that would have made the pattern visible. They had been looking at each quarter individually rather than at the trend. The accountant's job was to look at the trend, to see what the accumulation of individual data points said as a whole, and to present that picture clearly. The numbers in Jennifer's household told me what was actually happening. 2 years and 3 months of data on a single variable. The quality and freshness of food prepared for me relative to the quality and freshness of food prepared for others at the same table was sufficient data to support a conclusion. The conclusion was consistent with the other data. The comment about my taste, the comment about waste, the specific quality of the warmth, and the word mom. I had been trained across 31 years to distinguish between the numbers that support a conclusion and the numbers that are insufficient. These numbers were sufficient. My specific expertise in acquisition valuation had been developed in the later years of my practice, when the firm's growth had produced a client base that included companies seeking buyers and buyers seeking companies, and the matching of the two was work that required the specific ability to understand what a company was worth, not what it said it was worth, not what the market had recently assigned to similar companies, but what the company was worth given its specific situation. Its specific situation. specific trajectory, and the specific circumstances of the transaction. Meridian Analytics was worth what I paid for it. I had done the analysis. Tricia had confirmed the analysis. The terms were fair. What the terms also were, the terms were an irrevocable instrument of the specific result I had been preparing since February. Jennifer Crane Nosu is 41 years old. She married my son Marcus in 2015, and they have lived in the house that Marcus purchased in 2018, the year after Solomon died, using a portion of the inheritance that came to Marcus and his sister Alicia. I moved into Marcus and Jennifer's house in 2020, when the pandemic's first wave had made living alone in the house. Solomon and I had shared less safe than I preferred, and when Marcus had made the offer with the specific warmth of his son, who genuinely wanted his mother close, and who had not thought through the implications of closeness as carefully as closeness required. Jennifer had made the offer less warmly. She had not made it at all. It was Marcus's offer, and Jennifer's response when it was made had been, in my observation, the response of a woman who was managing her husband's decision rather than sharing it. She had said when Marcus told me the invitation was extended, "Of course, Mom, we'd love to have you." The of course was the tell. It was the word of someone who is accepting an arrangement rather than choosing it. I had accepted with genuine gratitude because Marcus's offer was genuinely given, and because living alone in the large house had genuinely been difficult, and because I am not a person who declines genuine warmth because it is not universally shared. Jennifer's genuine view of the arrangement had revealed itself across the months, in the specific ways that people's genuine views reveal themselves when they believe they are not being closely observed. The leftovers were the most visible expression, but they were not the only one. The specific way she described me to her friends on the phone. Marcus's mother is staying with us rather than my mother-in-law is living with us. The distinction being between a temporary guest and a family member. The specific way she allocated the household tasks. The cleaning and the grocery shopping and the meals were allocated to me, with the understanding that these were my contribution to the household, which was fair. But the allocation was made without consultation, which was not. I had observed all of this with the patience of an accountant recording transactions, not reacting to each transaction, but building the ledger, understanding the pattern, waiting for the period to close. The leftovers were not primarily about the food. Food is food, and I have never been a person for whom the quality of food is the primary concern of a meal. The leftovers were about the statement they made, that my comfort and my dignity were less important than the household's convenience. That I was, in the household's actual economy, a burden whose needs could be managed rather than a person whose preferences deserved consideration. I had been a partner at an accounting firm. I had managed a practice with 12 junior accountants and a client list of 47 companies. I had been the person whose analytical capacity had driven the firm's acquisition advisory practice for a decade. My taste was not ruined. My assessment of my situation was entirely accurate. The specific quality of Jennifer's assumption that my preferences did not merit consideration because age had compromised my capacity to recognize quality was the assumption that bothered me most. In retrospect, not the leftovers themselves, which were unpleasant but manageable. The assumption behind them, the idea that an old person's relationship to quality is somehow diminished, that the older you get, the less the texture of your daily life matters, that the appropriate standard for care of the elderly is efficiency rather than dignity. I had worked with elderly clients across 31 years of accounting practice. I had done estate work, which required sitting with elderly people and understanding their financial situations in the context of their lives. And the elderly people I had worked with were not people whose preferences had been diminished by age. They were people who had accumulated preferences across 70 or 80 years of living, whose relationship to quality had been refined rather than degraded. who knew more precisely than most younger people what they wanted and why. The idea that taste deteriorates with age is a convenience for the people who are serving the aged, rather than a fact about the aged. I had the means to respond to the assumption in the only way that an assumption of this kind can be effectively responded to, not by explaining, because explanations of dignity are not persuasive to people who have not recognized the dignity, but by demonstrating in a specific and felt way what the assumption felt like from the other side. The lottery had given me the means. The 31 years had given me the expertise. The 2 years and 3 months had given me the specific documented understanding of what needed to be demonstrated and why. The board lunch in September was a real event. I want to be clear about this. It was not a performance or a theatrical gesture. It was the first board meeting of Meridian Analytics under new ownership, scheduled with the standard business purpose of a new owner's introduction to the senior leadership team. Meridian Analytics had, in addition to David Chu and Amanda Forsyth, who had remained as operating partners under the new ownership structure, at competitive compensation, because the company's value was dependent on their continued leadership. Senior team of 5, the CFO, the VP of Product, the VP of Engineering, the Director of Client Services, and the Senior Marketing Manager. The Senior Marketing Manager was Jennifer. She had not been informed of the ownership change in advance. The ownership change had been announced internally on the 1st of July with a brief note from David Chu, which stated that the company had been acquired by a holding company called Ashton Capital Partners and that no operational changes were anticipated. The note had not named me. This was Patricia's advice, which was sound. The strategic moment for the naming was September, not July, and the July announcement was the announcement of change without the announcement of my identity. Jennifer had texted Marcus in July about the ownership change. I had seen the text on Marcus's phone, which he had left on the kitchen counter. She had said, "Our company got acquired by some random holding company. Hope it doesn't mean layoffs." Marcus had texted back, "Probably fine. These things usually are." I had noted this exchange. The September lunch was scheduled as a new ownership introduction lunch, a standard event in post-acquisition transitions, at which the new owner meets the senior team, hears about the company's current initiatives, and establishes the relationship that will govern the future working arrangement. The venue was the Meridian Analytics conference room, which was large enough for the senior team of 7, plus me. The caterer was arranged by Patricia's office, a professional catering company that serves board and executive lunches regularly, whose quality is specific and documented. I gave Patricia one additional instruction for the catering arrangement. Patricia delivered the instruction without comment, which is one of the qualities I have always valued in good legal counsel. The ability to execute a client's direction without requiring the reasons. The instruction was this. The lunch was to be served with one exception. For one seat, the seat that would be identified to the caterer by its position at the conference table. The meal was to be the previous day's catering remnants, reheated or unheated as available, plated with whatever vegetable garnishes had wilted in the previous 24 hours. The caterer, who had experience with unusual client requests, confirmed and delivered. I drove to Meridian Analytics on the morning of the lunch in the car that I had driven since 2019, which is a reliable and comfortable car that I have maintained properly, and that does not announce its occupant's financial status. I mention the car because it is consistent with the approach I take to most things. The quality is in the substance, not in the signal. Patricia met me in the lobby at 11. The lobby of Meridian Analytics is the lobby of a professional services company of its size and age. Functional, presentable, with the logo on the wall and the reception desk in the conference rooms visible behind the glass. David Chu and Amanda Forsyth met us in the lobby. They had known my identity since the closing in July, and the months between July and September had given them the opportunity to do their own research on me, which they had done. David had sent me a thoughtful note in August about his research into my career, and Amanda had called to discuss the company's strategic priorities. Both conversations had been the conversations of capable professionals who are in a new ownership relationship and who want to understand who they are working with. Both had gone well. We walked to the conference room together. The conference room had been arranged for the lunch. Place settings, water glasses, the name cards. The name cards that identify each seat. My seat was at the head of the table, which is the position of the chairwoman. Jennifer arrived with the other senior team members at 11:45, which was the scheduled arrival time. They arrived together from a team meeting in the adjacent room, which David had arranged to ensure everyone arrived at the same moment, rather than filtering in at different times. I watched Jennifer enter the conference room. She saw the table, the arrangement, the name cards, the lunch setup. She looked at the seat at the head. She looked at me. I watched the recognition happen in the specific sequence. That recognition happens when it is significant. First, the face, then the context, then the recontextualization of everything the context implies. I have described this sequence before in other stories about other moments of recognition. It is always interesting to watch. It is particularly interesting when the person recognizing is also the person being recognized, and when what is being recognized is not merely a face, but an arrangement of power, Jennifer said. Mrs. Nusu. Jennifer, I said. Please sit down. Her seat was identified by the name card. Jennifer Crane Nosu. She sat in it. The caterer was behind me, ready. The lunch service began at noon. The catering was what professional board catering is when done correctly, the specific combination of quality and restraint that distinguishes business dining from celebration dining, the presentation that communicates seriousness rather than festivity. The soup was a roasted tomato bisque, fresh and smooth. The main was a pan-seared salmon with asparagus and a lemon beurre blanc, prepared that morning. The dessert was a small tart. The caterer served each seat in sequence around the table. When the server reached Jennifer, the plate that was set in front of her was different. It was a plate with yesterday's food. The soup had congealed in its bowl, with the specific quality of soup that has been refrigerated and not fully reheated. The vegetables, asparagus from the previous day's service, were soft in the way that asparagus becomes soft when it has been cooked and then refrigerated, and then not adequately warmed. The salmon had the texture of fish that has been through time. The table noticed. They noticed the way that a table of professional people notices something unusual at a shared meal, with a specific peripheral awareness that says something has departed from the expected, combined with the professional social training that prevents the immediate verbal acknowledgement of the departure. They looked at Jennifer's plate. They looked at their own plates. They looked at me. Jennifer looked at her plate for a moment. Then she looked at me. The looking had a quality that I recognized from the years of the kitchen table, the assessment of a situation that does not match the expectations with which one arrived. I want to describe the specific quality of her response in this moment, because the description is what makes the moment legible. She is a marketing professional, and marketing professionals develop over the course of a career the ability to maintain composure while processing something unexpected. She maintained composure, but the processing was visible in the quality of her stillness, the specific stillness of someone who is understanding something that has arrived through the body rather than through the mind. You can argue with a verbal explanation. You cannot argue with a cold plate at a table where everyone else has fresh food. What she was understanding in that stillness was what I had been understanding at her kitchen table for 2 years and 3 months. The specific experience of being the person whose plate communicates without words something about the assessment of your value in that room. 2 years and 3 months, she had been the person at the table deciding that the assessment was appropriate. 3 minutes, she was the person the assessment was made about. The ratio is instructive. There appears to be, Jennifer said. Yesterday's catering remnants, I said, reheated where possible. I asked the caterer to prepare it specifically for your place. The table was very still, Mrs. Nusu. David Chu said carefully. Is there? Thank you, David, I said. This is a deliberate arrangement that I'd like to explain to the group. I looked at Jennifer. For 2 years and 3 months, I said, I ate yesterday's food at your table. You told me my taste was ruined and that I shouldn't waste good food. I wanted you to have the experience of sitting at a table where everyone else has fresh food and your plate has what was prepared for me. I paused. The experience is about 20 seconds old, and I can already see that you understand something that 2 years and 3 months of my telling you didn't convey. Jennifer was looking at the plate. She was not looking at the table. She is a professional, and a professional woman of her caliber understands, in the moment of professional humiliation, that the table is the last place to look. I allowed the plate to sit in front of Jennifer for approximately 3 minutes. The 3 minutes were not comfortable for her, and I understood this, and I had decided in February that the 3 minutes were the necessary duration. Then I said, please take it away, to the caterer, who removed Jennifer's plate and replaced it with the fresh service. Jennifer's salmon was the same salmon everyone else had received. The lemon beurre blanc was warm. The asparagus was green. I want to be specific about this decision. The decision to replace the plate. Because the decision matters. The purpose of the arrangement was not the degradation of Jennifer's lunch. The purpose was the education of her experience. The specific felt understanding that the arrangement she had maintained at her own table for 2 years and 3 months was an arrangement that another person had to live in, and that the living of it was a specific and unpleasant experience. 3 minutes of that experience was sufficient for the education. Prolonging it past 3 minutes would have converted the education into something else. I am not a person who does things for longer than they need to be done for. The lunch continued. I introduced myself properly to the senior team, which I had not yet done. The circumstances had provided their own introduction, and the formal introduction followed the circumstances. I told them about my background, the accounting practice, the acquisition advisory work, the specific expertise that had produced the Meridian Analytics acquisition. I told them what I intended to do with the company, which was to support its growth while maintaining its culture and its leadership. David Chu, who had recovered from the plate's implications with the professional poise of someone who has been in business long enough to have sat through other unusual board lunches, asked intelligent questions about my strategic intentions. Amanda Forsyth asked about the capital structure. The other senior team members asked the questions that their specific functions produced. The lunch became what it was meant to be, a new owner meeting her company's senior leadership and establishing the relationship. Jennifer asked no questions. This was consistent with the situation, and I did not press her. After the lunch, as the senior team was filing out, I asked Jennifer to remain. Jennifer, I said, I'd like to have a brief conversation before you go back to your office. She sat back down. David and Amanda remained as well. I had asked them to stay for this conversation because what I was going to say was relevant to them as operating partners. I'm going to explain something about what happened today, I said. And then I'm going to ask you something. I told Jennifer what I had told her at the table about the 2 years and 3 months. I told it more completely this time, without the audience of the senior team, with the specificity that the full account deserved. The fish that had been in the refrigerator too long, the reheated meals that arrived at varying degrees of warmth, and varying degrees of palatability, the specific comment about my ruined taste, the specific comment about waste. I told it as data, the pattern that the data revealed, the conclusion that the pattern supported. I told it as an accountant would tell it, specifically without emotional embellishment, with the understanding that the facts are sufficient, and that emotional embellishment is not necessary when the facts are sufficiently clear. Jennifer listened. She is a marketing professional, and she knows how to receive a presentation. She sat with the same posture that she had sat in at the kitchen table. The posture of someone who is managing her response rather than having it spontaneously. I understand, she said, when I finished. I think you do, I said. I think you understand better than you did 3 hours ago. She looked at the table. What are you going to do? she said. That depends on what you are going to do, I said. I own the company you work for. The decision about your continued employment is mine to make. I can make it on the basis of your marketing performance, which is the professional basis. David and Amanda, would you assess Jennifer's performance as meeting the standards of her role? David said, yes. Jennifer is one of our stronger senior contributors. Her client-facing work has been consistently well received. Amanda said, she's good at her job. There are no performance grounds for any other decision. Then the decision, I said, is not a professional decision. It is a personal one. And personal decisions are exactly the kind that I don't think should be made at business lunches or in the heat of whatever this lunch produced. I looked at Jennifer. I'm going to give you a period of time, I said. 30 days. In 30 days, I would like to have a separate conversation with you. Not here, not at the office, at my house, which is also your house as long as you and Marcus are in it, about what kind of relationship we're going to have. In the meantime, your employment continues. Your compensation continues. Your responsibilities continue. The 30 days are not a probation. They are a thinking period. I've been eating it for 2 years and 3 months. I'd like us to try something else. The 30 days between the September lunch and the October conversation were 30 days that I observed from the inside of the household with the specific attention I had been giving the household for 2 years and 3 months, which is 3 years and 3 months. Attention of someone who is recording what is actually happening rather than what people say is happening. What actually happened in the 30 days was different from the preceding 2 years and 3 months. The difference was not dramatic. It was not the dramatic reversal of someone who has been shocked into transformation. It was the specific incremental difference of someone who is recalibrating, who has received information that has changed the parameters of the situation, and who is adjusting to the new parameters. The food was different, not elaborately different. Jennifer is not a cook in any significant sense. And the cooking was still the cooking of a busy professional who thinks about meals instrumentally, but fresh. The fish was fresh. The vegetables were the vegetables of the current day. The reheating was thoughtful rather than perfunctory. She also, in the 30 days, spoke to me differently. Not warmly. Warmth that arrives after a confrontation has a specific quality that is different from warmth that existed before the confrontation, and I did not expect the warmth to be the same thing. But she spoke to me with the specific quality of someone who is aware that her interlocutor is not who she had assessed her as being, and the awareness produces a different quality of speech, more careful, more attentive to what is being said and what is being implied. Marcus had learned, in the first week after the September lunch, what had happened. He had learned it from Jennifer, which meant he had learned the version that Jennifer's perspective produced. He had then come to me, which is what Marcus does when he needs a second version of events. Mom, he said, the company. You own Jennifer's company. Yes, I said. The lottery, he said. Yes, I said. He sat with this for a long time. Marcus is not a quick processor. He is his father's son in this. Solomon having been a man who sat with information for as long as it needed to be sat with before he made a determination about it. The lunches, he said, the leftovers. Yes, I said. I didn't know, he said. No, I said. You didn't. I should have noticed, he said. Yes, I said. You should have. He was quiet for a time. This quality of quiet, the quiet of a man who is sitting with his own accountability, is the quality I have always respected most in Marcus and in his father. Some people, when they discover that they have failed at something, immediately begin constructing the explanation for why the failure was not their fault. Marcus sits with the failure first. The explanation, if it comes after the sitting. What do you need from us? He said finally, going forward. What do you actually need? This question, The question that should have been the first question before any of this produced in me the specific response that the right question, when it arrives late, produces, the recognition that the question is the thing that was missing, and that its arrival, however late, is better than its continued absence. A seat at the table, I said. The same seat as everyone else. Fresh food. The acknowledgement that I'm a person in this household rather than a burden it accommodates. Of course, he said. He said it differently from the way Jennifer said, of course. He said it with the warmth of a man who means it, which is what a mother knows about her son across the full length of his life. It is January. The October conversation with Jennifer took place as I had scheduled at the kitchen table in Marcus and Jennifer's house. My house, the house I live in, the house where I have a seat that is mine, and where the food at my plate is the food of thee. Current day. The October conversation was not a revelation. It was not the conversation that transforms a relationship instantly into something entirely different. It was the conversation that two people have when one of them has been operating on a false assessment and has received sufficient information to revise the assessment, and when the revising is real but incomplete, and when the relationship that follows the revising is the work that the revising makes possible. Jennifer works at Meridian Analytics. Her performance remains what it has always been. David and Amanda have confirmed this in their monthly conversations with me, which are the conversations of operating partners with an engaged owner. She is good at her job. Her employment is secure on the professional basis, and the professional basis is the only one that was ever appropriate. The household is not transformed. The word transformed implies a speed of change that is not how change actually works in relationships between adults who have been in a specific pattern for 2 years and who are now working out of the pattern. The household is different in the specific way of a place where the parameters have changed and where the people in it are adjusting to the new parameters. The food is fresh. I mention this because it is both specific and representative. The food at my plate is the food of today, prepared with the same attention as the food at every other plate, and the preparation reflects an understanding that I am a person whose preferences merit the same consideration as everyone else's preferences. What do I know? At 69, after 2 years and 3 months of leftovers, and the October lottery, and the February planning, and the July acquisition, and the September lunch, and the 30 days, and the October conversation, I know that dignity is not abstract. I know this the way an accountant knows that profit is not abstract. It is a specific, measurable thing that either exists in a transaction or does not. Dignity either exists in the food that is served to a person at a shared table or it does not. The leftover fish either communicates that the person's comfort matters or it communicates the opposite. The communication is specific and measurable, and the measurement was, across 2 years and 3 months, consistent. I know that the response to the measurement should be proportionate and should be designed to educate rather than to punish. The 3 minutes of the cold plate were not punishment. They were the minimum experience required for the specific understanding that verbal explanation had not produced. After 3 minutes, the plate was taken away. The education was complete. The rest was conversation. I know that Solomon was right. The thing to do with what you have is to use it for something that matters. The acquisition mattered, not primarily because it gave me leverage, which it did, but because the leverage produced the conversation that produced the possibility of a different household, and the possibility of a different household is something that matters. The lottery ticket was 30 seconds. The planning was 8 months. The acquisition was 5 months. The lunch was 3 minutes, and the plate. 30 days was the thinking period. The October conversation was 2 hours. 2 hours, 2 years and 3 months. The ratio is interesting. The food this morning was fresh. The seat at the table is mine. I am a person in this household, not a burden it accommodates. This is the whole of what I needed.